All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We're joined a couple of times a week, gratefully so, to be joined as it's made the comeback since his retirement. The Morning Line.substack.com, the author, legendary sports columnist here in Cincinnati for over 35 years, Paul Daugherty. Doc, you got the lid going this morning. TML, the Morning Line. I mean, now you got your merchandise going.
You got to promote the product, right?
Hey, you better believe it. You better believe it. Hey, I want to ask you a little bit about, first of all, welcome back from your little getaway. I know you were writing about it in the Morning Line. I read it the other day, yeah. themorningline.substack.com. You had great weather. You went up to Michigan, and it sounds like you had a wonderful time.
Never been to the peninsula, lower or upper. We went to the lower peninsula, an area close to Traverse City. Fabulous, Thom. If you've never been there, I recommend it. The only drawback is it's so far away. It was 7.5 hours, and you're barely scratching the surface by the time you get to Traverse City. But the weather was great. The views were fantastic. Highly recommend it.
I mean, you even drew an analogy to Cape Cod.
Yeah, Saugatuck, which is a little town up on the way up there, it looked a lot like Cape Cod, and I spent a lot of time there when I was a kid. And again, I took my kids to Cape Cod, so I know what each looks like, and yeah, it looks a lot like that, except not as crowded.
Yeah, oh, of course, yeah. I want to start with the Reds. I mentioned a little while ago, and another one of your Morning Line columns talked about your love and just pure enjoyment of the game of baseball. I think, to quote, what you had in your column about, and you've referenced this many times, sitting out on the back porch, having a cold beer, having a cigar, listening to baseball on radio. I don't know how many people besides you and a handful of others are still doing that kind of thing, to be honest with you, but I know there are some out there. What are your overall thoughts about where the Reds are and what they do now?
Boy, Thom, how much time do you have?
We got plenty.
I think they have locked their fans into one of two positions. They're not going to spend a lot of money, period. End of story. So if you're a fan, you either do what they ask you to do, which is have patience, let the rebuild progress as we hope it will, or you stop being an invested fan. That's it. Either you say, I love this team so much that I'm willing to be patient because I don't have a choice, or I in fact do have a choice, and that is to not to follow them, at least with your heart. Do what I suggested that I've done with the Pirates, who I love for 55 years of my 64 years on the planet, but dropped them. When the Pirates traded three really good kids, Tyler Glasnow, Austin Meadows, and Shane Baz, to Tampa Bay about 3 years ago for a pitcher named Chris Archer, I'd had it. That was it for me. And I literally stopped following them that day and have never looked back. And my experience, as I wrote the other day, my experience with baseball has benefited from not being mad all the time about the Pirates. So that's an option if you're a Reds fan. If, on the other hand, you love this team and have always loved it, grew up and loving them and so on and so forth, stay with them. But stay with them knowing that you're going to see a lot more pain for at least another year before things have a chance to turn around.
It wasn't even 48 hours after the Reds lose their 100th game of the season, only the second time in the history of the franchise. That's over 140 years of baseball where the team lost 100 games or more in a season. And the general manager, who we've talked about on this show, Nick Krall, who I think across the board most people feel, if given the chance, would do a very good job as a Major League Baseball general manager. He gets high praise from a lot of people outside of the Cincinnati Reds organization. Now, what he can and can't do, look, his hands can be tied by budgets just like the rest of us. But he comes right out and basically says, it was humiliating, it's embarrassing we lose 100, but next year we're not going to change much as far as our payroll is concerned and the direction of the franchise is concerned about trying to be much better. Is that a good message right out of the gate a couple of days after playing offense, a good offense? The best defense is a good offense?
Well, it's the only message. It's the only message. If you're going to go full bore into the rebuild, which they have done ever since the All-Star break, kind of made it official, then yeah. The fans here are smart, Tom. You can't BS a fan base like the Reds fan base. If you intend to do the rebuild completely, then do it. It's better, hopefully for Reds fans in the long run, to do it this way than the way they've tried to do it in the past, which was piecemeal it, which obviously hadn't worked. So sure, if this is what you're doing, be upfront about it and stick to it.
I always find it curious when coaches get fired. And look, I had a chance to broadcast Major League Baseball games for 33 years. And we've all seen it. Doesn't matter what franchise you follow or don't follow. You have a season like the Reds had. You blow out nearly the entire coaching staff. Even some guys that are behind-the-scenes guys have been blown out in the last 48 hours. And I don't mean to say that in a tongue-in-cheek way. I'm sorry when anybody loses their job. Those jobs are very important to those guys and their families. But, in the Reds' case, Derek Johnson, who is coming back as pitching coach, they basically have given him carte blanche to establish his pitching philosophy. It starts at the major league level, and then it trickles all the way down to the very lowest levels of the minor leagues, down to rookie ball. From an offensive standpoint, Alan Zinter is gone on the heels of just a couple of years ago firing a hitting coach. And I know you've talked about it. I wonder what their direction is from an offensive standpoint now moving forward.
Well, I'm not smart enough to tell anybody whether those guys deserve to be fired or retained or whatever. I simply don't know. I mean, you can look at the numbers and see that they're not that great, but you can look at the injuries too, and they played a part. My concern is that whoever they hire, Tom, will be their fourth hitting coach in 5 years. They had Don Long. They replaced him for a year with Turner Ward. They replaced Turner Ward with Alan Zinter, and now they'll have another guy. Turner Ward was a big launch angle proponent. He wanted to hit a lot of home runs. We play in this little park. Let's take advantage of it. Let's swing from the heels and so on. Zinter came in and was more in line with Nick Krall's philosophy, which let's hit the ball where it's pitched. Let's go with line drives. And now I have no idea what the philosophy is. The new guy, they don't have him yet. So my concern is not necessarily that they're firing coaches. Those guys get fired all the time. My concern is that they find a plan, a way to do things, and stay with it. Not only at the major league level, but as you said, what they've done with pitching with Johnson at every level. Start your guys from the day they walk off the bus in wherever the date, I don't know, Daytona, I guess they still have a team, Dayton, whatever. But their first place as a Red, all the way to the major leagues, teach the same things, emphasize the same things. There should be a so-called Reds way in the same fashion that there is a Cardinals way, and we haven't seen that here. And now they're going with their fourth hitting coach in 5 years. Maybe we still won't see it, and that, to me, that's a concern.
And for the record, Turner Ward is now the assistant hitting coach for the St. Louis Cardinals. They
can hit the ball.
They can hit the ball.
They do.
Bengals this weekend, Sunday night, prime time. We talked a little while ago about how those prime time games and postseason games used to be a nightmare for this franchise. That's starting to turn. This game against Baltimore. Now, look, I know it's only the fifth game of the season. Both teams come in at 2-2. But it has the feel of a big-time game. You agree?
Sure. I mean, it's a big division game. There's a huge difference between 2-3 and 3-2, and especially in this division. I think what they need to find more than anything is a little consistency. I think the play calling has not been good. There's some stats that say that when they're in a shotgun, when Burrow is in the shotgun, they throw the ball 75% of the time. When he's behind center, they run it. Say whatever. It's a tell, an obvious tell. They're not mixing up their play calling very well, and they have no running game. I mean, no running game. And I don't know why that is. It's probably a combination of things. Again, I'm not smart enough to sit here and tell you exactly why. And for 4 games, or at least the past 3, the Bengals haven't been either. So I think what they need to do, and this is not a great Baltimore team by any stretch. It's certainly not a vintage Ravens defense. I mean, they tore up the Ravens twice last year when most of the defense, especially the secondary, was hurt. They got most of those guys back this year, and they're still getting up a ton of points. They blew two second half leads. I think one was 17 and one was 21 in the first month. So they're not that great. It's upon the Bengals now to show that they can mix it up a little on offense, keep people guessing as to what they might be doing, keep teams from putting 8 in the box whenever Burrow lands sets up right behind center. And somehow get this running game, whether it means using Pirine and Evans more, whatever they want to do, they can't keep doing 2 yards in a cloud of Joe Mixon.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe
Chris Collinsworth was our guest. Chris Collinsworth was our guest here on Wednesday for an extended interview. One of the questions I asked him, and obviously he travels all around the league, sees all the top teams every single week for, however long now, forever now. And I asked him just philosophically about head coaches who are play callers. And I went back just to double check this because I know that Andy Reid is asked about this a lot in Kansas City. Is Andy Reid calling the plays? Andy Reid swears up one side and down the other that Eric Bieniemy calls all the plays. Now, Andy Reid can weigh in, of course. I mean, it's his job on the line. But Collinsworth made the point that he does not think it is a good thing. There are too many other things a head coach needs to be thinking of. Too much happening. You got 40 seconds to get plays in. You're wondering, are we going to go? If this is a third down, okay, are we going to go on fourth? You're thinking about all of these things going on and that it's not conducive to offensive success with the head coach as the play caller.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although you look at how the Bengals did offensively last year, especially in the second half of the year, and it's tough to make that case here. However, I just think that generally speaking, your head coach is the CEO on game day. You have hired other people to do the job that he is doing. Manage the game, control the challenges, understand the situations. That's a lot on your plate without having to decide, well, what do we call on 3rd and 4? I've never been a big proponent of a head coach calling his own plays, especially a younger guy like Zach Taylor, who's kind of still learning the ropes and can get schooled by older coaches who have been around and who are not burdened by having to call their own plays.
Well, we'll see what happens on Sunday night. Again, that's on NBC, 8 o'clock kickoff. Doc, I know you'll be up late watching and writing all about it. You posted after the Thursday night game. So am I going to be able to check in on the morningline.substack.com and have your opinions and thoughts right after the game is over, or I got to wait till the next day?
Chances are good you'll have to wait till the next day. Try to get it up by between 10 and noon every day. I don't know that I'm going to be writing. I wrote last week until whatever it was, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I kind of wrecked the whole week, right? I mean, us older guys need some sleep every once in a while. So,
if you can,
probably noon the next day.
All right, good enough. Doc, thanks for the time, man. Have a great weekend.
You bet, Thom. Thank you.
You betcha. Great to have Paul Daugherty. The morningline.substack.com. It's easy. You jump on there. You couple clicks here and there, and then it's sent to your email every single time it's posted. And his stuff has been great forever, and we're lucky to have him on at least twice a week to weigh in on what's going on, all sports Cincinnati.